let's remove that performance filter and go back to the full process. Now we are back with the frequency view of all of the 608 cases. If we scroll down and inspect the middle part and the end of the process, we will see there's a very thick line here. Most cases are following this one sequential path, which is good. The purchase order is being confirmed, an invoice is being sent out, and so on and so forth. At the very end, the invoice is paid. If we inspect the process carefully, then we will find one compliance problem in this process flow that we did not expect. There is one mandatory activity in this process, which is called release supplier's invoice, shown here. So every purchase order that is being sent out as an invoice ultimately needs to be explicitly released, and this activity is there to prevent fraud. So this is part of our purchasing guidelines that we need to adhere to. However, what we can see is that there are actually 10 cases that are bypassing this mandatory step. So they're jumping right to the authorized supplier invoice payment part. And this is a problem. Maybe we didn't even know that it was possible in the system to do that, but somehow people have found a way around it. And we can see not only that it happens, but also how frequently it happens. So 10 times this step was skipped. But also now as a next step, we want to know which of the 10 cases are this. So what I can do to find that out is I click on this arrow, and then I have this little button here which says filter this path. This is a shortcut that gives me information about all the cases that are following this particular path in the process. So if I click this button, I get to a filter that's already pre-configured. I could also have manually configured this, but this shorthand is convenient, so I don't need to remember exactly which activities are involved. I apply the filter. And then as a first step, I get the process map for those 10 cases, which in this case also not terribly interested in. I want to see the cases themselves. So I would go to the cases view, and here I have now a list of those 10 cases that all skip that mandatory step in the process. And I can talk to the people and find out what happened. Maybe they had a very good reason to deviate. Maybe some exception to the rule that I forgot. If that's not the case and they actually should have performed this mandatory step, then I can give them targeted training. This is one compliance scenario. There are many different ways to analyze conformance questions, as we call it in the process mining area, with process mining tools. For example, you might have compliance rules that indicate that certain things have to be done in a certain time frame. You can verify that, and you can find out, like here with those 10 cases, that bypassing that mandatory activity, you can find all cases that are taking longer than they are allowed to take. You can look at segregation of duties, which is different people need to perform two different activities in a case to prevent fraud, also called the 4 I's principle. And you can analyze deviations from expected process flows and variance to find out where the process deviates from the expected process.